Hi, it's about 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started in a minute here. I'm just going to give people another maybe half minute to filter in. There's still some people coming in the waiting room. I want to thank you all for joining us. And just one request, if you could try to be diligent with your microphone and keep yourself muted. If at any time you have a question for one of the speakers, the hosts, or anyone, you can go ahead and type that into the chat box and someone will either answer it in the chat box or we'll get to you towards the end of the Q&A. Now I want to introduce our host today, Tarek Khan, the founder and CEO of Global Diversity Marketing. Tarek?
Thank you, Chris. And first I want to thank everyone for being on the webinar today, and especially the team that has worked making this webinar successful. Chris Curley, Rashmi, Mailing, and Kenya. Thank you so much because these are the real heroes who are behind the screen, and they make sure that so many people show up on time. And I'm also very thankful to our speakers. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers: Terrence Clark, Michelle Meyer-Ship, Kim Cummings, and Fabian Di Rosario. So let's get started because I want to give our speakers as much time as possible. That's what you signed up for. And they're going to share a lot of insights from you that can really have a positive impact on where we go from here. So the first thing, the agenda, I'm going to briefly talk about the webinar. What is the purpose of this webinar? What do we want to get out of it? And then we will jump into the discussion with our speakers and followed by Q&A. Now Q&A is throughout the webinar. You can go to your chat box and you can put questions. Our speakers will be looking at them, but our team is also looking, and I'll make sure towards the end I pick some of the questions from what you have sent. And then towards the end, we want to walk away with key takeaways. Just some housekeeping information. Make sure your device is plugged in. You have enough juice or power in your device that whether you're using a laptop or phone. You take some notes about the actionable items. I never attend a meeting that I don't walk out of with at least 3 key ideas. Connect all the speakers via LinkedIn. Use the chat box to make any comments, to interact with the speakers. This webinar will be recorded, and we will share the recording later on with our database. And don't forget to provide your feedback. At the end of this webinar, you'll receive a survey from Rashmi, and it's a short survey, take you less than a minute, but your feedback is very critical and important for all of us. So the purpose of this webinar is really to understand the state of workplace. In January, we had big plans for 2020, including our vacation, conferences, and everything. And then came COVID. It changed not only the US, but the whole world. Obviously, we have been more impacted in many ways as we have, the most number of cases. And more importantly, we lost so many valuable lives, and we can never make up for that. On a business front, the business rules have changed forever. Our rules of engagements are very different. As resilient as we are, we adapted very quickly in working remotely. People say that this 2020 has taken us back. I say this has taken us advance. We used to talk about this virtual world 10 years from now, it's here. But it created new challenges and disconnected many people in many ways. Now we are slowly getting back to the offices. Some have already gone back. Some will go back in the next few months. But some of us would never go back to our offices the way it used to be. So I would like to start first with someone that I have known over the years, Terrence Clark, who is the president of New York and New Jersey Minority Supplier Development Council. Terrence is a partner. He has helped us promote this webinar. But more importantly, Terrence is someone who's very articulate and makes sense and simplify things. I've always found him. So I would like him to give the opening remarks and thank him for the support that he has provided. Terrence?
Thank you, Tariq, and good afternoon, everybody. Today I just want to more or less kind of outline first what it is that our organization does, and then why this is important and what you're going to hopefully get out of today's webinar. Our organization, as Tariq mentioned, the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Development Council, we connect and certify business owners, minority business owners in particular, to corporate members, large corporations, for business opportunities. So in our particular council, we have more than 1,000 business owners that are certified, and we have more than 100 150, 120 or so businesses that are large corporations that are looking to do business with these business owners. So why is that important? I mean, as businesses are looking to grow and to get into market opportunities, we help bring them together. So we hear from, and I hear from a lot of business owners over the course of the year. I have about 1,200 constituents, business owners, and corporate members. And one of the things that, people were trying different ways to grow their business. I'm sure at the beginning this year, everybody had a plan for what they were going to do. And those plans changed about March of this year, like the first week in March. Initially people probably thought this was going to be a short-term thing. This whole COVID-19 has become more than a short-term thing. It's going to become now a new way of doing business. And that means that business owners have to make adjustments. First major adjustment, which is something that we're going to be talking about today, is how to deal with the fact that some of your employers, or maybe all of your employees, will not be coming back to a physical office together. Now, to the employees, there are certain benefits to this. There's obviously not having to commute. So that also means that you don't spend as much money. Obviously, if you're in your home, there's a certain amount of comfort. And there are fewer, quote unquote, office distractions. So those all sound pretty good on as you listen to them. But there are also challenges. One of the major challenges is making sure that your employees are focused. Because at home, there are a lot of distractions. A lot of people live with other people, family members. A lot of people have pets. And given also what's going on with the education system, certainly in the spring and what's going to go on probably in September, a lot of people have to become teachers to their young kids. So you have all of those things going on while they're also trying to do business with you. So those are distractions that make it very difficult for people to focus. The third part of it is time management, because once again, nobody's telling you your employees what time to get up and what time to stop. So you have to look at, how do I mold all of this stuff into being able to continue to run my business in a good, positive manner and have engaged employees? Because the last part of it is, maybe you had staff meetings or people walk around the office and talk to each other. Those things don't exist now. You may have staff meetings, maybe you do them on Zoom or you do them on Teams or whatever platform you use, but it's, to a lot of people, it's not the same as the personal interaction they may have had day to day with their coworkers and their colleagues, and also with you as a business owner. So what you're going to hear today are, how do you bring all this together in a new environment with new markets in a new way of doing things? Because how you did business 6-8 months ago is not how you're going to be doing business in the future. Things are going to change. People have to pivot. And part of pivoting is, how do you make sure that the people who are important to the operations and development and growth of your business continue to engage and make sure that your business is moving in a positive direction? And that's something that I hope that by the time you finish with this seminar today, that you will now have some information that will allow you to move forward and determine the best ways and the most prudent ways to make sure that your employees are engaged and that they feel important and a part of your organization. Because when they don't, they clock out, and when they clock out, you don't do well. So you have to make sure there are different things that I'm sure the speakers will go over today that are going to be helpful to you. So I hope that you enjoyed today's event. And like as Tariq said, take some notes, ask questions, and make sure that you're engaged in what's going on today. Thank you.
Terrence, thank you so much. Thanks for your leadership. And one plugin that I would like to give, that the Minority Council has done a phenomenal job. If you are in New York, New Jersey area, and you are a minority business, I strongly recommend you be a part of that. We have been a part of them, and they have been very helpful. And those who are corporate leaders who are on the call today, this is really a great opportunity for you to support small businesses, the minority businesses, because they need. The backbone of America are the small businesses. So your support at this time is critical. And once again, Terrence, thank you so much. Thank you personally, and thank you for the council for being a part of this webinar and supporting us. Truly appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, so before I jump into my speakers, a couple of questions that you want to look at it, and the interaction that we're going to have is we're going to look at it that how is your situation changed? Some people are doing phenomenally well during this time, very few and far in between, but there are businesses that really have flourished. How has that impacted, the employers? People have plans, the graduating class is complaining that this is not the promise that America made to us. We used to be a fully employed market, and now, a lot of people have lost their internship jobs, so it has impacted. And how has that impacted employees, as Terrence was talking about, that, how this has become more challenging for some of us? And what can we expect in the future? Whatever has happened is not in our control, but what we do and react to it is very much within our control. And I'm going to interact with the speakers who really bring a lot of experience, that how are they doing it, and how are they really overcoming this challenge, and what can employers and employees do in this situation. So the panel of speakers that I have, obviously I'm going to start with Michelle Meyer-Ships, who is the Principal and Chief Global Diversity Officer of KPMG. And then I have Kim Cummings, who is the Head of HR and Diversity at BNSF Railway, and my good friend Fabian Di Rosario, who's a Senior Consultant of Global Diversity Marketing. And in my opinion, I think he's one of the most sought after global speaker on topic of diversity.
Stop.
Fabian, I'm not going to miss this opportunity, because I know a person who does about 50 to 100 webinars or seminars or speaking engagements a year, I think can walk away with that swag. So let me start with Michelle first. Michelle, thank you so much. And I would like to congratulate on your new role as a Chief People and Cultural Officer at Major League Baseball. That's really a huge accomplishment. So congratulations on that. You got yourself into some really challenging role, managing these players, and we are all excited to see, and I know that you'll bring a very positive change to that. But coming to the question, you're a seasoned professional who has worked in several major companies for so many years, and you've dealt closely with people. And as someone who is so closely working with people throughout her career, and you have your fingerprints on a lot of things that are people related, most of us have not witnessed a year like 2020. What is the state of employers or employees right now? What's your overview on this situation?
Great question. And thank you, Tariq, for having me. Thank you for your kind words. And hello to my fellow panelists and all the participants. So our employees are, simply put, on edge. And, it's interesting. My 3 young adult sons and my husband and I have this conversation every day about how, as we all navigate our workplaces, their academic institutions, as we run errands and go in and out of drive-throughs and things like that, people are on edge. In the workplace, I find that people are stressed. People are actually working longer and harder than they've ever worked before. To Terrence's point around time management that he mentioned at the top of the call, people are committing to longer days. They're starting earlier, they're working longer, they're glued to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever platform their organization uses in a way that sometimes has them not moving from their desks or their workplaces all day long. So not exercising, not sleeping well, distracted, managing multiple priorities. I think, Terrence, I love the comment that he made about, families managing multiple priorities, whether it be as a parent, as a caregiver to an aging parent, as a caregiver to a family member with a disability, and in many instances, living in a home where you have multi-generations in the space. So there are distractions. I mean, don't be surprised if during this conversation you hear my dog bark or a doorbell ring or something happen. So there's a lot going on. And I have found that focusing on self-care and focusing on time management for each of us individually is critical. And it's critical that our organizations think about how we wrap our arms around our people and make sure that we're taking care of their well-being.
Thank you, Michelle, and that's really great insights. And I'll be coming back to our speakers and switching back. Let me just move to Kim. Kim, you've gone through some unprecedented challenges within your organization, and you are involved with many other outside organizations as well. And most businesses really had to learn the new rules of engagement. So, the new word came out, WFH, working from home. That has become the new normal. What is your view on this? And, what are you seeing in the future? Are we over it? Are we still going through this? And, what are your personal insights about this?
Great, thank you, Tarek. The work from home challenge isn't a new issue. As this topic, HR professionals and business leaders were already managing through and thinking through this question, like, does work from home impact productivity? Does it positively impact productivity? How do we know our employees are working? Do we trust our employees enough to be able to accomplish their goals? How do we know that they're working if we don't see them every day? What is our obligation to home office setups? Do we have to financially incentivize people to have appropriate productive offices? I mean, lots of tangible questions that we were already thinking about from working from home. And let's not forget the varying degree of articles and experts that essentially said, working from home was not productive. And whether they meant to be inclusive or not, what we're now finding is that the most progressive companies were already pulling their workforce back into the office. They were creating environments where office spaces were becoming open, or open floor plans, the expansion of seating areas or common areas, thinking session areas, the emergence of experiential design or group think type forums lended itself to more collaborative workspaces. And so what we're seeing now with COVID and the pandemic is now those physical spaces are again being closed off. People are being asked to communicate differently. Physical distancing and messaging around safety have been enhanced. For companies like BNSF and those that are on the panel today, safety has always been paramount. Physical safety was easy to talk about because everyone was doing it. And there was some sort of financial liability to a company if we didn't talk about physical safety. So that was a given, and that's a responsibility for our employers. But from a D&I perspective, what does closing off of workspace mean? Putting up a wall or a barrier due to collaborative work, and how does that divide us? The haves and have-nots. Those have become pretty apparent in some of these work from home situations where we're virtually inviting ourselves into someone's home, where we can see if one person's in an actual home office or if someone's in a closet, if someone has a pool, if someone doesn't have a pool. So what we're seeing are, these dynamics that we otherwise would not have been, we would not have seen. So I think companies are in tune with this, and they're looking for a variety of ways to keep employees engaged, as Terrence and Michelle mentioned earlier. I'll also note that while employees are feeling the pain, so are leaders. I mean, leaders are also engaged. As you mentioned, Tarek, I mean, they have kids, they have dynamics in their own workspaces that they're looking through. So executives, leaders are also struggling with, how do we emerge from all of this, and how do we come out stronger, be more creative, so that our employees know that we care about them, and to also ensure that they have the tools and resources, to do the jobs that, we're paying them to do. But also from a D&I perspective, how do we allow for someone to be more inclusive in the workspace, and the flexibility that's included in all of that? There's organizations now that are talking through all of that. A company called I4CP has done many research articles in this space.
Thank you, Kim. That was really great. Fabian, if I'm not mistaken, I think you probably visit more companies and more people and connect with them, being a seasoned trainer than any one of us, because that's the nature of your job. You're working, and you've always been doing this globally. And I know that you're doing 50 or 100 webinars. How are the companies and employees that are adapting to the change? I mean, what are some of the invisible challenges that you're seeing through people? Because you are, in training and you connect with people on a daily basis.
I do. I've been blessed over the past 15 years, maybe in the past 5 years, I am averaging probably about 100 sessions in person. But ever since COVID, there was a 2-month period where there was no work. Things were being postponed. So let me give you the context. Right now, I am actively working with about 22 clients, and this morning I just finished my 42nd webinar, and at 1:30 I start my 43rd webinar. All of a sudden, the floodgates opened. So let me respond directly to the question of how are companies and employees adapting to this new normal, the term that we're always using. And by the way, I acknowledge and welcome everybody. A good afternoon, and my friend Tariq, Terrence, new friend, Michelle, new connection there, and of course my good friend Kim Cummings. We both serve on the NAB board. My answer to the question about the challenges, whether it's companies or employees, based on the context of I would call it a narrow view of the clients that I serve, I would say it's mixed. It's mixed. Some are doing well, some are not doing well. Now, there's been a lot of comments about the employee experience. They're adapting. I've had a lot of conversations, intimate conversations, where it's all the stuff that Michelle and Kim said. They're busier than ever. They're juggling multiple priorities. But they're also getting better. They're getting good. They've really set up their home office where they can be productive. That they found that small corner in the basement that the family is allowing them to have. So they're getting better at that. And some companies, and Terrence painted a very realistic picture of the challenges. But there are some companies that are doing very well. And I'll mention specifically, I was in a conversation with several people. They actually were calling in from the Hills plant, belongs to Colgate Palmolive. And they cannot make stuff fast enough. I had some clients, they were calling in, some engineers calling in from the P&G plants. They are producing, this is 24-hour shifts. So these CPGs are going gangbusters. But then there are others that are having to pivot. Terrence talked about the importance of businesses pivoting, where in some plants, they are changing their manufacturing lines to cater to the relevant products that are needed in the marketplace today. And these are some large organizations that I get a chance to peer in, for a few hours during these sessions. What I'm gathering also, and McKinsey is kind of my go-to. If you do a Google search, there's a series of articles published by McKinsey around how organizations globally are responding to COVID-19 and this new normal. And they highlight the three things. The first one is about talent, and much has been mentioned about that. There's a lot of upskilling and reskilling of the workforce as they continue to try to thrive in the current conditions, but also mindful that things will open back up, and they've got to do all the due diligence now to upskill and reskill the talent and the workforce for when things will flip back to the new normal. It won't be the same again. The second is around digitization and automation. There's a greater emphasis now more than ever before for organizations to leverage technology. But by the way, technology companies are also growing leaps and bounds, right? Because we're leveraging their technology, whether it's Zoom or LMS. I've got a client that is shopping for an LMS system. They can barely even schedule a call with a salesperson because they're just they're just backed up with all sorts of interests to create new learning solutions. So coming back to the McKinsey article talking about the importance of automation and digitization, I remember also reading that there was a reference to, this is my last point, there was a reference to a article, some research published by the Psychology Today magazine, that it takes 66 days for a new pattern of behavior to become automatic, to become a habit. We are way past that in the current conditions that we're in. And so individuals, human beings like you and I, and organizations are now moving into this new phase, this new way by which we do business. And we are starting to develop these new patterns that may be staying with us, new mindsets that are going to stay with us, that will very much influence and inform the future of work for tomorrow, which is right around the corner.
Thank you, Fabian. That was a great recap of what you're experiencing, and I think you're right on when it comes to this. Michelle, coming back to you, I know you have been an advocate of diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout your career. I'm going to talk about women in my next question because they are impacted very differently. Yeah. But people of color, right? When this thing started, we saw some racial attacks on Asian Americans. Just because you come from an Asian country, you're not responsible for that virus. Then we saw Black Lives Matter and a huge impact. And I personally believe, I could be wrong, but unless you're an Asian American, unless you're a Black person, or unless you're a woman, it's very difficult for you to understand what they go through, the challenges at work, and especially when you're working remotely, right? We come up on Zoom and we make small statements, and it could be an invisible harassment. So what's your, what is your view on the impact and experience of unusual discomfort, especially working remotely? What can companies do to engage their employees? And I'm specifically talking about people of color. I'm going to come back to women separately. But what's your view on that?
Yeah, so I've actually lived this and can speak to it very, very honestly and purely, because it has been the experience of my last several months. And I just want to, before I answer the question around what companies can do, I want to just kind of crystallize something that you said. And it is the pure, honest facts that our people of color in particular, who have all been differently or disparately impacted because of either COVID or the racial injustices we've seen. They have been impacted greatly. And there have been several articles written about the emotional tax, the trauma, and what I actually liken to the PTSD associated with all of this. So taking that into account, one of the things that I have always recommended, and that I recommended at my firm, and we started to do many months ago, was we purposely and intentionally connected with and engaged with all of our people around the issues real time every single day. So it started with our senior most leader literally stating to all of the partners across the firm that it was incredibly important that we touched in with all of our direct reports and teams on a daily basis to literally ask them nothing more than, are they okay? We also put into place an ongoing standard pulse survey check-in, and it was literally asking questions around, see, there's the dog, are you okay? Questions around whether employees, had what they needed with respect to COVID, whether they were experiencing anything out of the ordinary because of COVID, whether they were navigating specific issues and sensitivities because of COVID. And then likewise, we did the same around the issues of racial justice. And what we found from those surveys were that people were hungry to have conversations about their experience, that our colleagues, our white colleagues, wanted to understand and support and talk about it, but didn't necessarily always know what to say. So what we did was we actually created a forum at KPMG where we drove candid dialogues across difference. And we have been talking about race all across the firm for the last several months. My team put together a pretty cool resource guide and toolkit for our employees to help facilitate the conversations. And we also actually made a leader guide on how to have sensitive and uncomfortable conversations. Because Tariq, to your point, the conversations about COVID and the xenophobia and the all the things that were going on with respect to our Asian colleagues and things that were being said about where the virus emanated, disparaging remarks, we talked about it. When George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery were brutally murdered, we talked about it. And we talked about how we needed to support one another, how we could be allies for one another. And I have found that those dialogues have been incredibly meaningful to help our people navigate through this time because, one, they're able to show up and bring their true, authentic selves, no matter what the stress might be. They knew they had support and they weren't trying to hide some reality that they were living through that might have prevented them from showing up fully every day. So those dialogues have been incredibly important. And I would encourage all of the organizations represented here today, if you haven't checked in with your people, if you haven't had candid dialogue with your people, it's incredibly important to do it. To not do it actually suggests that you don't care. And in many instances, while that may not be the company's intent, that's actually how it comes across to your employee population.
No, I think that's a great point. And Kim, the companies that we consulted throughout this process, we created that listen, learn, and lead. It's very, very important to listen to people. There are times that, some of your female employees are not as engaged, they're dealing with different challenges. And sometimes, your Asian or Black employees are not engaged. So try to understand what one is going through. A lot of times we start the Zoom calls and we start, hey, what are the numbers? What are the sales goals? First, ask people, how are you doing? Just like we used to do in meetings. So that's a great point for companies. I think Michelle gave a great input in terms of that. Listen to people, talk to them, communicate to them, just asking them, how are you? And you're right. A lot of people were clueless about, we want to help, but we don't know how to help. Is this the right thing to do? So Kim, coming back to you, and I know you as a head of HR in dealing with diversity, people are the biggest asset of any company. And Kim Davis is on the call, and they have a people first initiative, which I believe is a brilliant idea, that people are the biggest asset of the organization. What personal insights can you share with us that what can companies do to ensure, even if they have people working remotely, because when people are working remotely, you don't have the same engagement interaction with people, as Karen said earlier, that you don't go to photocopier machine and ask everyone, hey, how's your little kid? So how can companies ensure that they can keep the employees engaged when they are connecting with them only via screen? What are some of the insights that you could share with us? Kim, I think you're on a mute. Kim, you're on a mute. Can you unmute yourself? Kim, can you unmute?
I can hear you. Yes, thank you. So one thing that Michelle said that I feel like I have to say is, kudos to you, Michelle, and your organization, because the impact of sharing how the world is today and how people are sharing their stories really, is impactful and something that people will remember for the long run. From a employee being valuable, it's really three words. It's show your care. So regardless of your position or the work that needs to be done, everybody can develop partnerships with their teams, with their direct reports, community members, etc. At BNSF, we all staff embrace what we call our leadership model.
Your voice is breaking. Your voice is breaking up. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, it's good now.
So, at BNSF, we have what we call a leadership model or leadership tenets that help inspire our employees to do, good work, and for them to, understand that we care about the things that they do. We believe in each other and we embrace that. We talk through it. We're very clear about equality and equal opportunity. Tools, resources, those types of things are kind of paramount to the employee engagement. But not to be a cliche, I mean, EQ is just as important as IQ. So it's important that that leaders today, in order to make their employees feel a valuable part, is really, ask them how things are going, to really show how they care about their employee populations. I've created an acronym. So when folks ask me, how do I become more actively involved? How do I show that I'm relevant to the workforce? And I have this thing called Find Your Flex, FLEX. And the word generally just means to adapt. And so when we think about flex and the first letter F, it really means to be focused. So as employers, as workers working remotely, you do need to be laser focused. You need to be measured. You need to remember that what you worked so hard for when you were at the office, all of those hours, billing, working with customers, bringing in new business. I mean, all of that focus can't go to the wayside. So you don't want to lose out on that. Remember your performance goals, the measures, all of the things that need to be, had to help you stay focused, creating a scorecard, some sort of measurement that helps you stay focused. The L in flex is lend support to others. So participate in a project, a company-wide initiative. Right now, our company is going through United Way, so something that gets you involved in multiple groups or surrounded by other people virtually, being part of a resource group, being part of a think tank, being part of community outreach. I mean, those types of things now more than ever will be important and get you the visibility that you need. The E, which is evolve, is, how have you made your work more efficient? How have you evolved from, when you were in the office to how you're making your work more relevant today? Did you come up with a new idea, solution, progress? Have you been working on a longstanding problem that you now have solutions for? How are you evolving in the workplace? And then finally, it's excitement. Show excitement. Now, many of you have been part of many webinars, and I am sure there's, the more excited your speakers are about the topic, the more engaged you are, and the more you want to hear about them. So how you show up for the physical work is important, but it's also important virtually. Dress up for work, exercise, clean your workspace. Be mindful that your virtual presence is now more important than it ever was before. People like fun. They want to talk to you when you're fun and engaging. I'm an introvert, so it really takes a lot of energy for me to really showcase that my care and that I, am excited to be part of the conversation. Tell a funny joke, comment, those types of things that set you apart from others. How will you flex to include yourself into this virtual environment? So there's tactical things that you can do to make a strategic position for yourself, but it's also about that show your care. And I think all leaders, regardless of what position you have in the organization, have a responsibility to show your care.
Great tips. Thank you so much, Kim. Fabian, you're working with a lot of companies, and lately, what are some of the challenges that you have seen employees? One or two biggest challenges, and how are companies overcoming that? So, what are some of the best practices that you can share with us?
Some have already been mentioned. Let me just capture them in perhaps three buckets. Health and safety is number one. Kim has already mentioned that. And companies are extremely attentive to ensuring that they're making decisions for their workforce in a manner that is responsible, based on science, based on CDC recommendations. I'll tell you, my wife works for Delta Airlines, so I get the updates, just like an employee. And they are mandating for every employee to get COVID-19 tested. Delta Airlines has partnered with Mayo Clinic, so they're not playing around. Obviously, this translates into business, right? Because travelers need to trust the airline when they're interacting with their employees. And so health and safety is terribly important. We've heard of Google's decision of when they're going to open up their campus next year, late next year, well, not late, but later next year. Coca-Cola company, many companies have already announced that they're not opening back up. So it's critically important that the leadership of these organizations, big or small, are very in touch with the right resources for the best scientific information and making the tough decisions to protect their employees. Because if they don't have the trust of the employees, you no longer have the business. And so that's paramount. Another thing is, just to kind of build on what Michelle and Kim have talked about, is I am hearing many people be challenged about their disconnected work and their disconnect with each other. Kim talked about the importance of focus. I actually wrote that down as one of the things I wanted to talk about, because it's hard for people to focus when they're juggling multiple priorities at home. They're a caretaker, they're a homeschooler, a home teacher, and oh my goodness me. And being able to deliver value is critically important, because people are concerned whether they're relevant. And they need to make sure that they have the necessary exposure and the necessary connection to the rest of the operation, to the rest of the people. And here's my last point. This is where leadership has to show up. I call this the moment of truth. When I had a couple of sessions with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, I indicated to the managers, this was for all the managers, and I said, hey, look, everything that you know about what it means to be an effective manager, an effective leader, here is your moment of truth. Because in crises, this is where your stakeholders, the public, and certainly your people that report to you, this is where you get an opportunity to shine. Because whatever you do, good or bad, is going to be even more amplified. And so managers and leaders need to provide transparency, clarity, constant communication. At a distance, if people don't know what's happening, if they don't know how they fit into the work, if they don't know what the future is around the corner, they're going to make stuff up, right? I teach unconscious bias. People will make stuff up. And if you've got a team of 50 people that directly report to you, and they don't know really what's going on, they're going to make stuff up. And that's 50 variations of reality. That's organizational chaos right there. Structure, clarity, making sure that people understand. That's the role of the manager. Quit doing your other stuff and make sure that you're leveraging and scaling up your responsibility so that the team is able to produce as a team. They're relying on that planning and organization that is critically important coming from the leaders and managers. Tariq, back to you.
Thank you, Fabian. That's really very insightful of you. And I know we have, we're approaching our time, but I want to have the last set of questions, and I like to keep it maybe 2 or 3 minutes response, because I want to dedicate some time for some of the questions from the audience. Michelle, this is one of my favorite topic, and I can do a webinar on this. The 51% population in America and majority in the world. Why we have been so unfair? The woman at workplace, and they call it working mother. I think every mother is a working mother, but this has been very challenging for women, especially they're working from home, because they have to do homeschooling. And I know when my kids were young, one day I was looking after my son, and I said that I'm babysitting, and my daughter reminded me, no, that's called parenting. So why have we demanded more? We just go to Zoom meetings and we expect them to be available for us from morning till evening, and not realizing, how can we miss such an important thing, and why have been so unfair, and what can companies do to really properly engage, especially the women part of their teams? Why is we so demanding from them?
Such a great question, Tariq, and it actually goes back to something Fabian said. around leaders showing up, leaders checking in, leaders providing structure. And on the issue of structure on this one, I think this is where really being clear as a leader and understanding your team's needs for flexibility, for structuring their workdays is so very critical. Because again, I mean, I'm a mom of 3 young adult sons, and no, I don't have to teach them, but they are running around here distracting me all throughout the day. And they do have needs that I've had to care for. So I totally get it. And let's be honest, as much as I would like to think that in 2020, men and women carry equal share of the child rearing, it candidly, the majority of it also always falls on the mom. So what I say for organizations is for women and also for other caregivers, you really do need to understand and ask the question, if you haven't yet, around their needs for their work days, their structures and their schedules, and you need to give them flexibility. Because otherwise, you are going to get someone who was unable to show up and unable to bring their full selves. And then back to Fabian's point, when that woman or that caregiver doesn't show up as their full self, the leader is going to make all kind of assumptions around why they're not showing up, but maybe has never asked what the leader can do to make them more productive in their day. So it's all around structure, transparency, and clarity. So I think Fabian hit that one spot on. That's what we have to do to make sure that our moms and our other caregivers can show up and be productive and drive the organization forward.
That's a great point. So we have to be more considerate and understand that many of them are doing homeschooling from working from home. Kim, what advice do you have for employees to really stand out, when they're working virtually? When you go back to the office, you have many opportunities to really stand out and be unique in your work. But what are some of the tips that you can give for employees to really show that they are an important part of the team?
Mm-hmm. So I just have a couple of them. So for those that are employed and that are working, whether virtually or in the office, and because I've been back in the office now for a couple of months now, but I would say this simply, check your attitude and your positivity, right? Don't waste valuable time complaining or harping on things that the company has already communicated or things that everyone kind of knows is already going on. So don't waste your valuable time complaining. Come up with solutions, work to be more favorable in that space, find a better way of doing things, but focusing your attention on it is getting the right attention. The second thing that I would say is, find new ways to celebrate successes and thank people. Earlier, Terrence had mentioned investing in small business. Now, and more than ever, it's so super important. Organizations like Farm Girl Flowers or Kudo Board or Tips Treats. Those are just small or grassroots businesses that have emerged to help employees and leaders and others to really thank people that have helped them along the way. Thirdly, I would say join a local chamber of commerce or some sort of community outlet to use your time. And you're looking for a new position, not doing anything doesn't get you attention. But going out and actually working and using your time to be productive in organizations like your local chamber or other community nonprofits is work, because you're using your emotional intelligence, you're using your knowledge, skills, and abilities to help an organization run more smoothly and efficiently. Media for good, and many of you on LinkedIn have seen the pay it forward messages. If I've known you and you're looking for a job, please see what I can do to help you. Now is the time to embrace each other, embrace strangers, and embrace those that are looking for help and support, because that goes a long way. In regards to resumes and helping them with job interviews, that makes you just as important as the person looking for a position. So support a cause, use social media for good to help those that are looking.
Thank you, Kim. Fabian, in next couple of minutes, how can you explain, because you do a lot of webinars on unconscious biases, microaggression, cultural humility. What tips do you have for leaders who have not been exposed to diversity or inclusion in that way, how can they be more sensitive, especially the business leaders? What can they do to make sure that they show more inclusiveness to their employees?
I will answer that question by sharing a short summary of a VP that manages a team that is about 52 people large. And when the George Floyd incident happened, this leader reached out to me personally. I've done some work for the department, and I also found out that it was a male VP, also reached out to other colleagues, both of African descent or heritage, and also non, to get personal coaching and guidance of how he can respond as a leader. And after that, this individual brought the entire department together, had several listening conversations, and about a month and a half later, began a cadence of their, every month they have a department meeting, all 52 come together, and starting with, I think it was the July meeting that this started. For the full hour that they meet, 15 minutes is dedicated to the subject of race equity. And the first speaker that actually stepped up, that was scheduled to fill that 15 minutes, was one of their senior leaders, who is a white male, talking about the issue of race and their personal experience around it. I know this is a very specific example, but I think it's illustrative of how each person can take a very conscious effort to show influence and leadership. And leadership, I mean, not by position, but by intentional influence to do better for the group and for others, the better version of ourselves projecting forward. That's my response.
Thank you, Fabian. And as I move towards the last 10 minutes of I'm going to have quick questions, but I want to summarize what we have learned in terms of, it is very important, like Michelle and even Talon said initially, and Kim and Fabian talked about, that understand the need of your employees. Whatever our needs, our employees' needs could be very different than that. Some of us are more benefited by some things, others are not. So we have to, it's very important. Communicating to employees, as Michelle talked about it, talk to people. Even if it's for a few minutes, talk to them and reach out to them and show you care. And understanding the need of your employer also. And a lot of time, we are working remotely, so we think that, we don't have to be connected to the business. If they're paying you full-time, then you are full-time dedicated to them. So make sure that you provide that. And leading from a distance, this is a challenge. This is a conundrum for many leaders, that how do they really manage and lead people from a distance? And this is going to show that those who are caring leader and servant leader, they'll stand out. Managing remotely and making sure that repackaging your profile and how you behave on social media. I used to put a thing that, social media is such an amazing thing that even if you don't say things, it shows who you are. And companies that don't take a position on important topics, actually that is their position. So your company will stand out. LinkedIn profile, make sure you update your profile, position yourself as a subject matter expert, whatever your expertise is in, increase your contact. Your post and blog. I follow Michelle very, religiously, and her point of view on LinkedIn. She really come out with very insightful thoughts and thought leadership on many different topics. So make sure you connect with all our speakers on LinkedIn. Stay positive. This is a very important time, to have a positive mindset. Some people, when I go to their post and I look everything negative, that's not going to help. And understand the difference between social media. LinkedIn is your office, Facebook is your home, and Instagram is probably your bar or something else that, depending on how active you are. I'm not very active on Instagram, so I can't say. But please understand the difference. Professionally, you got to be very active on LinkedIn. So I want to make sure that We all have a call to action in the last 5 minutes. I may go to all our speakers and ask them to summarize in 1 minute, but believe in yourself and, remember the best is coming ahead of you. Take a proactive approach. The best time to stand out and be unique is right now, and have a strategy. How would you really plan your professional career in next 3 to 6 months? That's very important. And communication is very important. So I'm going to ask my speakers to have a 1 minute wrap up. Michelle, I'm going to start with you. If you need to, your last message that you have to communicate to our participants, how would you summarize that?
Really simply, because I think, Kim, I love your FLEX acronym. I would say I wrote it down and I circled it 9,000 times. I love FLEX for each of us individually. I would say for leaders as well. And then 2 things, self-care. Self-care is critical because we are operating in very unusual times, and every day it seems like there's a new challenge. And then if you are a leader of people, check in with your folks. You can do a lunchtime hour, an after work happy hour, whatever it is that you need to do. Stay close to your people. I think you said it best, Tariq. Servant leadership at this point is where you shine. So support your people. Those would be my comments.
Thank you. Very well said. Kim, how would you summarize this?
Yeah, I would say 3 things. First is reach out to someone that you don't normally talk to. That kind word, that kind reach out could be the thing that they need to keep going. You never know what people are going through, and lending a helpful, hello, how are you doing? Let's do lunch, let's connect, I think makes a world of difference. So definitely reach out to someone you just don't normally talk to. The second thing I would say is, now's the time to not just dust off your elevator speech for that next interview, but now's the time to really highlight your story. I think each and every one of us on this call today have a story to tell, regardless of if you're a minority or non-minority. I think that's going to be something that is going to resonate with you from now until, the end of your career and into your, retirement journey. Share your story, brush it off, and share that with others. And then finally, it really is about team effort, collaboration. Now's not the time to be, secluded at your home. It's to be included. So find ways to engage with other individuals so that you can, stay afloat with what's going on and feel like you have, your support team there when you need them.
Thank you, Kim. Fabian, how would you summarize this?
Tariq, I'll just offer one thing. Seek to understand. In these days, we have been bombarded with, and there's plenty of videos, articles, things that people are sharing through email. Put some time aside to just learn about history, learn about other people's experiences that could be very different from yours. Seek to understand, be diligent about it. I'll finish with this piece, because this is something I always remind myself that drives this kind of behavior. And that is, if I'm not intentionally, purposefully including, doing things that are inclusive, I could be unintentionally excluding. I want to shine a light on my blind spots. I invite you to do the same. Tariq?
Thank you so much, Fabian. And in the end, I would just like to thank all my speakers, and keep in mind that staying positive is very, very important. If you're an employer, show your care for people. They are your biggest asset. The most difficult thing, if you ask me in my career, is always finding good people and retaining to them. And if you're an employee, this is the best time. When the business is slow, you paint the store. This is the best time to stand out and be considerate to your coworkers. Try to understand, if you're working with women, they may not have the same schedule. They may not be watching a ball game at that time that you are, and they may be feeding a child. So please be considerate. Very, very important. We will overcome this. And then we'll forget about this. But if you're alive in 2020 and your family is okay, you should be extremely thankful for what you have. We will overcome this. And this is a great opportunity to network with people. Keep in mind, these are very, very busy professionals who are on the webinar with us today, and they're giving their time. So if you want to learn something, go and sign up on a webinar. If you want to give something, be a speaker. So it is very, very important to understand we need to help each other. And I think This is the important part of it. I want to thank again our speakers for being a part of this, as we are almost at a 1 o'clock spot. We will send you a survey. Please fill out that survey. It is very important. Your feedback is most important, and that's is how we improve. Make sure that you go on and connect with all our speakers via LinkedIn and stay connected. Be positive. We will meet again in better times. And once again, Terrence, thank you so much. Michelle, thank you so much, and good luck to you in your new position. We will talk to you again, and I'm sure with your leadership, you'll bring a very positive change to Major League Baseball.
Thank you.
Kim, thank you so much. You know, you work for an organization with a lot of employees. We will have many connections in the future. And Fabian, you're only a phone call away. Thank you so much for always coming through. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.